Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands twice if you can hear my voice. Good morning. How do we sleep? Good. Are we rocking it up right now? Yes. Finally. Thank you all for making it and making it almost on time to all on time. All right. That's really cool. I definitely want to start because that way I'm respecting your time. Your classmates will have to figure out how to show up on time, like all of us did. It's definitely feasible to do. Okay. So today we're learning about some CSS Grid. CSS Grid. Grid. Yeah, well, there was a slight, excitement foreshadowing towards it. Did we like Flexbox? What, you liked it because you say that it was easy for you? Yeah? You liked the frog game? Yeah? Okay, so there's another game today. Yeah. So, okay. All right, so the great idea about CSS Grid is that you're actually going to be able to make grids and sections within your style, right? So if you can imagine your website, right, and we can break it down and be like, okay, well here's a nav bar at the top, and then we have a header would go here. So let's just start breaking things down. Nav bar, header, and then we've got all this main content. And we have this footer, right? So if you can imagine a website that kind of looks something like this, it might seem like, okay, well then how do we actually style this and how do we keep it responsive, right? So when it changes size, when the window changes size, it doesn't completely break and look like my version of Yelp, right? That we saw yesterday. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that with CSS Grid, where we actually would define some type of grid layout, and then we can put things in their specific rows and columns. Okay? Questions on the preview? All right. So to get started, let's go ahead and create an HTML file and a CSS file, and then link everything up together. So I've already pre-made an empty HTML file. All right, let's get this bigger. Oh, that's right. I was programming yesterday, so everything got small because believe it or not, I don't like to work with it. I have got pretty good vision, sort of. I'm wearing glasses. Anyway, so we'll make the title. We'll just say CSS Grid. And okay, let's also go ahead and link up our CSS sheet. So what kind of tag do I need to do that? Link tag, yeah, okay. So link rel style sheet href, and I'm just going to call this, well, mine's called master.css. Yours might be called something different. And let's just make sure that it's all linked up by, I'm just going to call the body, and I'm going to give it a background pink, just to make sure that it's working. Okay, yeah, so screen turned pink, so I know everything is correctly linked up. Right, so you should even test your CSS, right? When we're doing JavaScript, we just do a quick console log of hey or anything. Same with CSS. Last thing you want to do is be futzing around with your CSS and have nothing working and keep futzing when you just haven't even connected it. Okay, so my pink is connected. Awesome. All right, so let's see. Let's demonstrate this first by creating a container. So I'm going to make a div, or I'll make a main tag inside of our body. And I'm going to give this the class of container. And all this is going to do is it's going to hold a bunch of divs. So I'm going to have a div. Actually, there's a thing in GitHub that you can grab for today's lesson if you don't want to actually rewrite everything, so that it looks like this. So we're going to have all of these different divs, and they're all going to look like that. So what does this look like on our website? Well, when we refresh, it just looks like this terrible list, right? Let's go ahead and give these a little bit of style so that we can better see each individual thing. So I'm going to go ahead and select container. And inside of my container, I want to do this for every div. And so I'm going to give things a border radius just to make it look, that rounds the edges if you're unfamiliar with that already. So if I say 5 pixels, it'll have nice little rounded corners. I'm going to give each thing a padding of 10 pixels. This will give the, can somebody remind me what padding does? Space on the side. Can you be more specific? Not yet? Okay, Karen? Content what are the words? Content to what? To the border. Nice, right? The padding adds the space between the content to the border, so it kind of increases the size of the element. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and give it a background color. Let's say light blue. And we'll give it a border of 2 pixels, solid red. Right? It's not going to be that pretty, but we'll at least be able to see each element. Oh, I guess light blue isn't. I don't know. Let's give it a background, maybe. Will be better. Oh, it's because we can close that. There we go. Ugh. Right, so we can see that we have our elements and we have each div there. So a div by default is a display block, just so you know. That might come up either later today or tomorrow. Display block by default goes 100% width of its parent, so it will try to stretch all the way across the screen. And so let's go ahead and start with creating a grid. So similar to Flexbox, right? When we're doing a grid, we grab the parent. So if I want to grab the parent of all of these, I have to grab the container. Right? All of these divs, as we can see here, all of these divs are nested inside of this main container. So we're going to go back here to our CSS. We're going to say that container. And the first thing we can say is display. What do we think it's going to be? Grid? Yeah. Grid. Right? So the other one, yesterday was display flex, today is display grid. And when we refresh, I think nothing should change yet. Okay. So nothing's changed because we haven't defined any characteristics of our grid. So let's say we wanted to have 2 columns in this grid. Okay? Well, we start to define the shape of the grid here. So I can say grid, template, and I'll say dash columns. And now I can write a couple different things here. I can say pixels. So let's say I wanted to start with pixels. So I say 200 pixels. and 200 pixels. And every time I write something here, I don't have to separate it with commas or anything. Every time I write, it's creating a new column of this size. So let's see what that looks like. And we see that it's created these two columns. If we look at the elements and inspect, we can see that there is like this grid. It's got the dotted line. The elements are really small. Let's see if I can increase the size of the screen. How's that? Okay. Okay, right, so we can see that there is this grid. If I highlight and select, you can see this dotted line. It's kind of hard to see in the center, but trust me, it's there. All right, so how would I add a third or fourth column? Sin?
Keep going.
Just keep going?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
What if you wanted your third column to be small?
Interesting. You mean like 55 pixels?
Show them what makes it.
Let's see what would happen. Oh, interesting. It's like it keeps pushing them in to the grid. Yeah.
Follow. So what if I just wanted it to be just big enough to fit the word?
Just big enough to fit the word?
Yeah. See how like 3, 6, and 9 they kind of they don't need all that extra room.
Well, they're gonna have that room because of the padding. The padding is 10 pixels on each side of the string, so they can't get smaller than the content. But how would we do? I think we would have to use some kind of like more like auto stuff that we haven't quite gone over yet. But I like it. I like this. Okay, right. So we can do more. So I could keep naming pixels here. This also takes something called like EM, which I kind of forget exactly how that works. That's okay. And then the other common one is fractions. So let's say I wanted to do 2FR, 1FR, and 1FR. We'll see that this first column equates for half of the space, right? Because 2 of 4 possible fractions is 50%, while the other ones will each be 25% of the space. So let's refresh, and we'll see that it now stretches all the way across, and we have a 25%, 25%, and 50%. This is done using fractions. This is something that's definitely very useful, because a lot of the time you don't want to hard code the amount of pixels. Sometimes maybe, it depends on how responsive you're trying to make your site, but if you're like, oh, okay, when it gets bigger, I want it to like stretch and elongate. So we might not say like, we just want it to be 100 pixels no matter what, because on a big screen like this, 100 pixels is not going to look so great. I mean, I'm pretty zoomed in, but if I was zoomed to a regular, it would look less attractive. So with that in mind, you can use fractions, but you can also use percentages. So if let's say I just wanted to do percentages. I can do 50%, 25%, 25%, and it will look the same. Okay, so that's fine too. You can also do a mix of all of these. So if I had if I wanted one of my rows to be 50%, the other row I'd want to be 100 pixels, way too big, 100 pixels, and then maybe of the remaining space, I want to have a 2FR and a 1FR. Let's see what something like that would look like. Can somebody break down what we're saying here? You can? Yeah?
There's a mixture of so you had 100 EX. you have 50% in one, which is this first row.
Okay.
And then you had 100 on the second, 100 here on the second row. And then you had, I believe,
2FR?
on 2FR, which isn't that the same thing as 50% though?
Oh, well, that would depend on how many FRs there are.
Oh,
Right? So, like a fraction, right, you can have 2 of 4, but I can also have 2 of 3. These aren't the same size. This is 66.6 repeated. This is 50%.
so it's, so that 2FR is 2FR of
The space remaining.
um,
So, that's what I'm getting at. So we have our 50% here. That seems pretty straightforward. Then we have our 100 pixels here. And then we have this peculiar amount of space left. And we're saying 2FR and 1FR. So that's a total of 3. Right? So one has 2/3 the fraction size, and one is 1/3. And so this is the 2/3 of the remaining space, and this is the 1/3. So it can get a little mathy, but it is a grid. Yeah. So let's say, so a challenge. How would you make 4 columns of all equal size? Yeah, go for it.
Using whatever.
Using whatever, yeah. 4 columns of perfectly equal size.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So far, I'm following along with the GitHub lesson, not this one. Oh, there you go. All right. I think that's technically enough time if you've been following along. Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Okay, so who wants to help me walk me through this? Yeah, Farah?
1FR, 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 1FR. It also happens to be my initials, so I'm not
I like that. That's a good mnemonic device. Think of Farah. That's how I remember it too. So Farah says 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. And so there's a total of 4 there, right? And so each one is one of those 4. So that should be 25% for each one. And it looks pretty good. And if we change the size of the screen, here, let me minify this. This is like part of the point of, right? Part of the point of this is as we change the screen, it remains responsive to the sense that like, hey, this stays at 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. Now maybe this doesn't look great to you, I don't know, but I mean, we will be able to do other things with it too. But we can see that it does keep this this same percentages throughout. So that's something that is nice about that. Yeah, Erickson, I saw you had your hand.
Yeah, if you use instead of fraction, 25%, you can add the same word.
Yep, that would also work. If you use percentages, though, keep in mind, like, It's going to be a little bit annoying. Like if I say, all right, now let's do 5 columns. So for you, you'd have to go back and change all of those 25% to 20. Well, I would just have to go 1 FR. Because now it's 1/5, right? So that's definitely an advantage to using fractions compared to percentages. That said, there's definitely like a little bit of a, gotta get this right. Okay, so there's a shorthand, because like if I wanted to have 7 columns, this would kind of be super annoying, yeah? And so the shorthand of that goes a little something like this. So instead of writing them like that, I can say repeat, parentheses, and then I say the number of times I want something to repeat. So let's say 4 in this case. And then I say what I want to repeat that many times. So I'll say 1 FR. I'll save it, refresh, and we'll be back to our 4 columns. Cool. Any questions on that? Yep. What is that fraction? The question was, what does FR stand for? All right, so if we don't want every element kissing, we can add a little grid gap to it. All right, let's make this a slightly less intimate. We can say grid gap, and then you can say how many pixels you want the gap to be. So let's say I want 5 pixels between each element. I'll save that, refresh, and now we've got this grid gap. Not too groundbreaking. So far we've had each element, we've only been defining columns, and the rows have been generated for us automatically. But let's say we wanted our rows to be a little bit more specific, like how high we wanted, how tall we wanted our rows or something. But we can control that. So let's say I wanted my rows to be 100 pixels. I can go in here and I can say, like, for the automatically generated rows, grid auto rows, let's make those 100 pixels. I can also, just so you know, declare how many rows specifically I want, and we'll get into that too, but just so you're aware. And it will look the same as this format. I can say grid template rows. But for the auto rows, I want them all to be 100 pixels. I refresh, and now they're all 100 pixels. So this looks okay, but not necessarily awesome. I don't know. Let's say we added a bunch of p tags inside of one of our divs. So we'll go over here. Hang on, this is also in the GitHub, already made nicely. So if we go into our HTML, and let's like add a bunch of crap inside of our 3. Okay, so let's say I added all of these p tags, where I say like 3 now with lots of p tags. What do we think is going to happen when I refresh the other page? Does anybody want to make a guess? Okay, talk with the person next to you for a minute and decide what's going to happen. Now that we've added this in here, we've kept the CSS the same. What's going to happen to our page when we refresh? clap your hands once if you hear my voice. All right, somebody who hasn't looked, what do they think is going to happen?
Stay to the bottom.
It's gonna what? Overflow. You said
Stay to the bottom.
stay inside the box. Okay, those seem like the options. Let's refresh and check it out. Ugh. Right? It just like totally overflowed. So that's because we put on a defined height for our rows, right? We said, hey, every row is going to be 100 pixels when we don't care about the content. So, well, we can adjust for that too, right? Because obviously some of these are going to have different heights than others. So we can do that by giving our rows a min-max property. And it looks a little bit like this. So we'll say auto rows, and then we'll put inside as the property to the attribute. We'll say min max. This is all lowercase. We'll invoke. You can kind of think of it as invoking it. Takes in two arguments. The first argument is the min. So in this case, we'll say 100 because that was the minimum height we wanted. And then for max, it's the second argument. For now, we can say auto because we want it to automatically adjust. Do that. We'll refresh our page. And now that whole row will automatically adjust to that size. Right? So something worth noting is it did expand the entire row, which expanded all of the elements that were inside of that row as well. But we can see that as we change screen size, it still is responsive and adapts. Maybe we don't want 4 columns necessarily, right? Maybe we want our columns to be like a set width, like a similar to like the way our rows are behaving, where they just kind of fit the elements. So we can do that too by changing our grid template rows. And so instead of repeating 4, we could repeat something called autofill. And instead of saying that each one has to be 1 FR, we will give it a min-max as well. So we'll say min-max, invoke that, and we'll say how wide we want things to be. So if we want everything to be at least 200 pixels, we'll say 200 pixels. And a minimum, so like when it gets its very smallest, when we shrink the screen, let's say we want just 1 per item, right? We'll say 1 column if it's really small, and we'll want it to expand all the way across. So we'll say 1 FR for the max. With this type of behavior, when we refresh, we'll see that as the page expands, we'll be able to fit more in. And as it shrinks, it will adjust the amount of columns, making it quite a bit more responsive. Oh, there we go. Any questions on that? Oops, I don't know how that got so small. Any questions? Absolutely. Are we all right? Okay, so let's continue. I'm going to remove all that crap for now that was inside of the 3 div. Let's go back to having 3 in there. Yep. Control Option D. Okay. Well, here, I'll just make it the same as all the other ones. Okay, and I'm going to go back to, instead of having this repeat autofill, like let's go ahead and make a really set grid. All right, so let's change a little bit what we're doing. Let's say we want to have a grid that is a 5 by 5. Okay, so there's 25 or 4 by 4, whatever. 4 by 4. We'll do it 4 by 4 because we've got 9 elements. Let's have it so we have like some extra room. And we'll do 5 by 5. Okay, so we'll do. If I want to have 5 equal columns, what can I put inside of this repeat? Sorry? Starts with a 5, yeah. 1 FR, right? This is going to give me the fractions. Okay, and so let's also give us 5 rows. So instead of having grid auto rows, get rid of that for now. I'm going to use the same style that I used for our columns. So I can say grid template rows. And I'm going to say repeat 5, 1, FR. Oops, what's the? There we go. All right, so this should be making a grid of 5 columns with 5 rows. Let's see if it works. Okay? I'll save that. Go here, refresh our page, and let's actually take a look at this container. So we can see we've got this 5 by 5, right? Bless it. Mm-hmm.
So, grid auto rows changes the size of the rows, not necessarily making the rows.
Grid auto rows allowed it to make, like it was already automatically making rows because we didn't have that defined, we just had the columns defined. And then when we gave it a property of 100 picks, it said that it wanted each row to be at least 100 picks. Good question. If you don't like writing all of this, we can actually, there's a shorthand version of this as well. Which just looks like grid template. And then we would say the rows and then the columns. So I could say repeat 5, 1 FR. And then I would say, well, I have an extra set of parentheses for some reason. And then I would say slash, so that's the rows. And then I would say repeat 5, comma 1 FR. All right, so that's a little bit shorter. Go back here, we'll refresh our page, and we're still good with our container. Questions on that? So how do I remember that it's always rows before columns? I think of R2D2, and then I think of RC. So like, no RC, R2D2, like I think of someone like that. I know it's kind of weird and like seems stupid, but if you think of it, you'll probably remember that rows always come before columns. You could also think it's not alphabetical order, but that seems a lot less fun. Okay, so this is one way to write that. Because there's other things we can learn, which we'll learn that are like also row column, or like row column, row column. Interesting. All right. Question, or is that just a stretch? Is it just a yoga? Okay. Okay, so we can say where we want things to start and end. So let's look back here and say, okay, let's say I wanted my 1 to go, let's say I wanted it right here in this row, and I wanted it to stretch all the way to the third column. Weird, right? So, okay, how do we do that? Well, there's a couple properties, but there's something we should know. First is when we have a grid. We start counting with 1, okay? We do not count at 0 like arrays. So, this is 1. This is 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the horizontal rows. The vertical rows are, I'll do it here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inverse, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and same. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay? We'll see it more in action. So bearing that in mind, let's figure out which rows we want. So if we want it to start here, what row is that? Or what column is that? Let's say. Okay, so we're going to say, let's say grid, column, start, we'll say. That's going to go to 1. And then end, where should it end? 1, 2, 3. How far did we say we wanted? 1, 2, 3. Did we want it there? I don't remember.
No.
No, here?
Yeah.
Okay, so 3. Which row are we in? Which row do we want to start? 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe 4. Okay. And end? We want to go up. Hang on. Let's count. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we want it to be here, right? So what's this? It's 5, yeah? Okay. So those are our numbers. Let's try them out. So, how do we do this? We got to go grab the element that we want to position. So, this element is, we said 1, right? Which has, if we look at our HTML, is this class 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and select that. So this is outside, so we'll say .1. And we can say, okay, grid rows start, or, so do we want to do rows or columns first? Okay, so we'll say start. Grid row start, what do we say we're starting at? We said 4. And then we said grid row end. Where do we end? 5. All right, let's see what we've got right now. When we refresh, we've moved our 1 down. So that's pretty cool. And everything else suggested, as is. And then let's say we want to do grid, column, start. Which column did we want? Which one? 1, okay. And what grid column end? Which one did we want for that? 3. Let's save that. And we refresh. And now we've made 1 occupy this space in this grid. That's pretty cool. That's a lot of power, right? Again, if we resize, it still is going to be remaining in that area. Right. Yeah, question will. Oh. Okay, never mind. Cool. Yeah, I love a good count. Or maybe we can highlight the container to help you. So this row start, row end, kind of annoying, yeah? It's a lot of writing. So we don't actually have to do that much writing. Thank God, right? So let's change this. So I'm going to comment that out. And instead of writing grid row start, get grid row end, we're just going to write grid row. And I'm going to say the start is 4 and the end is 5. I'm going to change the column to be the same style. So I'm going to say grid column. And that's going to be a 1/3. Let's go make sure it worked. And it did. Right, no changes, which is a good thing. No discernible change. If this still feels like too much writing, there's another one. So instead of having my grid rows, I'm instead going to say grid area. Okay. The pattern is RC, RC. So it's row start, row end, column end, right? So kind of like the R2, D2, RC, RC. You'll remember it. Okay, so let's write this in RC, RC. So grid row start is what? Now C. So column row start is what? 1. Grid row end is what? Grid column end is 3. RC, RC, R2D2. Let's refresh. Right, perfect. Shazam. Great master you are. Cannot help it. Too much energy. Okay, questions on that? All right, so now your challenge. I want you to move the 4 into the most bottom right quadrant of our container. So I want to see the 4 right there. Okay? Right there.
Number 4 is the last.
I want to see the div that says 4
Yeah.
right there. The bottom right quadrant. Or, yeah, parcel, section, however you want to talk. Yes, that's me.
It's like I have to switch your line into
I know it asks for HTML asks for no, then you think about it like
Where's the closing? Got it.
I got the question though.
Just let me see it. I want to see it go. Cool.
Yes, I agree. I wanted to it would have to start the row on 6. And then how many rows? 5. I think it's because you have corrected. I just created it.
I think that's for an actual chart.
Okay. This is because you have the answers. No.
What's a 5 by 5? Guess I'm wrong, Edward. It's like that fucking around part. All right. Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands twice if you can hear my voice. Okay. What do we got? Yeah. How do we do it? Yeah, Eric.
Grid area.
Okay. I should grab 4. Yeah. So I'll say dot 4. You say grid area.
And then 5
Slash 5. Okay. That makes sense. RC, right? So we're going to refresh, and we've moved our 4 over because it's the row start, column start, row end, column end. Okay? So let's say, how else could I have written this? Yeah.
I just put 5 and 5.
Okay, so all he did put just 5/5. So that's fine. The reason he's able to do that, I'm pretty sure, is because that element itself is already spanning for 1 row and 1 column. And so if we put where it starts, it just automatically will do that. But that wouldn't work like if I wanted it over 1 and I was doing 4/4. That moved it up. I did the wrong one. RC, right? So 5 and 4. But I wanted it to expand. If I didn't want it to expand, if I wanted it to expand, I have to say where it ends, right? If I didn't want it to expand, I could just drop the ending and just say where it starts, and it would do its automatic size that it's currently at. Yeah, Farrah.
It also works if you do -1, -1, -2, -2.
Boom, right? That's the other answer I was originally looking for, right? So let's say we learned about negatives, right? So where does it start? You say -1 slash -1 slash -2 slash -2. Also works. It's starting here, ending here. You can also mix and match positives and negatives, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Any questions on any of that? No? So that's most of it. There's also, yeah.
Why did you end on 6 for columns?
Because that is the last number. Because we start at 1, so if it was 5 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wanted it from here to here.
It worked when I just did 5.
That was probably just ignoring it. But yeah. Right, lots of different ways. The most important is that you get it to work when you're doing CSS. So don't question the CSS gods too much. Although you can keep questioning me, as I am but a pure mortal. My brother-in-law's last name is Mortel, so my wife says Mortal because of her accent. Anyway, it's a fun fact. It was our wedding anniversary yesterday, but he did not come up. Oh yeah, thanks. It's it's quite the life sentence. All right. Okay. Let's keep going. But that was fun. Yeah. Thank you. Will's news is much bigger. Okay. So there's also, we can also use like justify content in these types of situations and align items, very much like Flexbox. I'm not going to go over them because I think you're going to get to practice them today anyway. Question, can you put grids inside of grids?
Yes.
Yep, why not? Right. Can you put flex boxes inside of grids?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So you can keep, so the main point of that sentence is that you can continue to parcel up these grids. So like, if I wanted to and I had some div that I wanted to put in there and I wanted to like grid that up, I can, right? I could just like keep gridding, okay? So that's kind of really a cool idea. The last thing I want to show you is something from Scrimba, which is like, let's say, okay, so let's go back to our HTML. For now, I'm just going to comment out all of our HTML. You can just get rid of it. I'm commenting it out so you have the history in your notes, right? I'm not coming back to it. And let's go ahead and create our container again. So I'm just going to say, for now, I'm just going to put it all in a div, just so we can see different things. Div, I'll put class is equal to container. Oops. Container. And I'm going to put all the stuff in here. So, bless you. Okay, so I'm going to say I have like a header. So I'm going to go ahead and make a header tag, and I'm going to write header in here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and instead of have a header, it's going to be my, let's say nav, like this is going to be, or a menu or something. So I'm going to say nav as if like we can change around on the menu. So for now, I'll just say menu. I'm going to have like my main section where I'm holding all my content. So I'm going to have main. Oops. See if it's going to give it to me. Yeah, there we go. Content. And we can do our footer, and I'll write footer in here. And let's just go ahead and give these some style. Like, so right now, our page should look like this. Brilliant. Oh, we're still using our other styles. I'm going to get rid of all of our other styles. For now, I'm also going to comment on all of this. I don't want a grid yet. There we go. That's what it should look like. Let's just give it some color. Oh man, the commenting out tool for like CSS is just an absolute disaster. Okay, something like that. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put some like styles on these. So on my header, I'm gonna make it like a background of green, color white. Let's put some stuff on our nav. just going to make that a background. This is just so we can see some attractive color. Pink. Semi-attractive. Main, we'll give it a background of light blue. And our footer, let's give it a background of yellow. You can choose your own colors, right? This is pretty irrelevant to the idea of grid. The other colors didn't come through. I have what? Line 25, thank you. Background is spelled wrong on line 32 and 37. Got it. Thank you. Okay, cool. So now we've got these like sections. So what if I wanted to be really specific about my layout? I'm going to show you something we can do. Okay, so I'm going to ignore all this stuff. Up here, I'm going to go ahead and grab my container. I think my container, let's go ahead and just make sure that, like right now the container is not the whole size. Well, it is the whole size. But let's go ahead and try to make it 100%. So we'll say height is 100%. Okay, well, whatever. And then we'll go ahead and make a grid. So we'll say display grid. Let's give a grid gap of 3 pixels. And let's say we make 12 columns. Okay, so I want 12 equal columns, and within that I want 3 rows. The top row I want to be 40 pixels. The middle I want to be automatic, and the ending row I want to be 40 pixels as well. Okay, so I can do something like this, where I say grid template columns. And I'll say repeat 12, and what goes in here? 1 FR, right? 1 fraction. Thank you. I actually don't know how to spell it. Thank you. Okay. Spelling crisis averted. Okay, and let's go ahead and add those rows. So we'll say grid template rows, and I'm going to say 40 pixels. Auto, which means I just want to fill the rest of that, and 40 pixels. Save that, and let's go see what we've currently got here. So I'll refresh. And we'll see this is currently our space. Yeah. There is a row in between there that is just being squished because there is no extra, nothing in there. So you can kind of see from that dark line separating the. So I can create template areas as well. So this is kind of interesting. This is something you can consider doing. This isn't something I do very much, though, because I'm not really an artist. But I could say grid template, areas. And then I can start to make rows. So let's say I go like dot, because I want my header to not go all the way to the end, but I want it to be the rest of the space. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and dot. That's 12, right? So this says I want my header to be in the top row, in the 10 spaces, with one column on either side. It's a weird way to do it, right? We could have just said like row start, row end, and column start, column end. We could have done that. This is just an alternative way. Let's keep building. So let's say I also want to have my nav bar, or my menu, let's say, right to the side. Here, this is what I'm drawing. This is what I'm trying to do. We are building this. This is our header. This is our menu. This is our content. And this is our footer. Okay? This is like what we're building. Let's say we wanted our website to look like that. This kind of overall shape. But content we actually want to be bigger. Okay? That's the shape we're building. And so we're actually going to draw out what we want. So I want my menu here in the middle, and then I want content all the way across. So if I want this footer, what do I need to draw for this? Based off of what we've seen for the so far. So it's going to be dot, yeah, space. F, 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 this. All right? Okay, so this is our grid template area. We've created the space. And when we refresh, we should see, okay, we don't see any change because we've just created these areas. So now we can actually assign things areas. So we want our header to be where the H is, yeah? So I'm going to say grid area H, because that's where I want my header. Where do I want my nav bar to be? The menu, right? So I'll say grid area M. Where do I want my main to be? C, right? So grid area C. And where do I want my footer to be? Grid area F. Sorry? The dots are saying I don't want anything here. Okay, so when we refresh, it's created our space. The reason it's squished is because our body and HTML are currently not occupying the full size of the screen. Like so, if we had to do that, maybe I could say like min width 100%, something. Body. Oh, I don't want width, I mean height, right? Let's see if we can get it. This is kind of an annoying thing that sometimes happens. If this doesn't work, I'm just going to move on. Alright, yeah. So everything is squished up because our HTML is squished up because we don't really have any content on the page. But you can see we were able to effectively design where we wanted things to go. So that can be a helpful thing to just be aware of. You might see it in someone else's code someday, and this way you won't go, what the hell are you doing? You'll go, oh, okay, yeah, I know. I'm aware of that. I don't usually do that, but I see that exists. Right, this is also still responsive. As in it stays there. We could set breakpoints, but we haven't learned that yet. All right, any questions? That's pretty much all of the grid. The rest, up till lunch and sometime after, we'll be working on the lab, which I think includes Grid Garden, which is kind of cool. It's like the Flexbox Froggy for grid. Any questions? All right. Demand. No, that's okay.